Hello again. With every new television drama and film today showing the Tudor period and Regency Britain as having been almost as full of black people as the modern country, most young people today are growing up convinced that Britain has always been a multiracial society. This impression is carefully cultivated not just by means of the fiction which they watch, things like the Netflix series Bridgerton, but also by the material used to teach them at school. Books like David Olusoga's supposed history of black British people are to be found in every classroom. The way that the fraud, the fake history if you will, is constructed is really quite ingenious. It is done by hunting around until you find one single person of any ethnicity other than white British and then casually mentioning them in such a way as to suggest that this person is just a random and typical example of the people around at that time, one of many. We're all familiar, of course, with that wretched trumpeter whose image appears so often. It's on the back cover of Olusoga's book, Black and British. It's no good pointing out that this person has no business on the cover of a book called Black and British, for he was not British at all. All the evidence suggests that he arrived in England in 1501 with Catherine of Aragon. The first mention of him is recorded in 1507 and the last in 1511, so he probably came to Britain for a few years and then went back to Spain. British he was not. The fact that he is mentioned every time anybody wishes to talk about black people in Tudor England suggests that he was a rarity, but this is seldom admitted out loud. One scatters his image about, and this subliminally suggests to children that he was just a typical black British person during that time. This is how the black history trick is worked. At any period in British history, there are always a few Arabs, Chinese people, Indians, the odd African and so on, staying in the country. Most were passing through and only stayed for a few months or so. But with a little care, it's possible to create the impression that there were many of them and that they formed a permanent community. This is, of course, quite false. The same sort of thing is now being done with Muslims as well. That is to say that people are casting around for Muslims who have some tenuous connection with Britain and publicising them so that Muslims feel at home and start thinking that there has always been a big Muslim community in Britain. Somebody commenting here the other day tried to pull this trick and it was quite neatly done. I spoke about the film The Northman and remarked that some people disapproved of it because it showed women staying at home while their husbands went off to fight abroad. I remarked that this was precisely what happened in Britain during the Second World War. After mentioning that the country was almost 100% white at that time, I said, during the Second World War, women stayed at home and raised children while their men went off to fight a war abroad. This is undeniably true, but somebody commented saying that it was not so and asking if I had heard of Violet Sabo and Nur Inayat Khan. Of course I had, but neither woman was of course British and so had nothing to do with the matter. However, Nur Khan is another of those people like the black trumpeter who was sometimes produced to prove that Britain has never been an all-white society. She is someone who is brandished to prove that Muslims have always been around in Britain. She can be seen in the thumbnail to this video. Her mother was American, her father Indian, and she was born in Russia. Spent a few years in London before moving to France with her family at the age of 6. A brave woman, certainly. She went on mission to France as a wireless operator for the SOE, the Special Operations Executive, and was murdered by the Nazis. However, by using the image and mentioning her Indian heritage, it is possible to describe her as a British agent, which is ambiguous enough to suggest that she was British. The Guardian did this when they did a bit on her a couple of years ago, to which I provide a link. A statue was erected of her in London a few years ago. Much was made of the fact that her family was Muslim and she was described as a British Indian, which she wasn't. The overall impression children and young people gained from all this is that there were loads of black musicians in Tudor England and masses of Indian immigrants, secret agents during the Second World War. By taking rare and exceptional individuals and giving them prominence, the message is subtly conveyed. This person is just one of many. It's untrue, but we can't really expect children at school to know this, which accounts for why they are getting such a peculiar and distorted view of their own nation's history.